Good morning everyone, welcome to my channel. Okay, today's video is connected to the journal that we've been making for all of my tags from the Anne Brooks project. So my last video you saw the pages all stitched in. The panel that the pages are stitched to is now attached to my cover, and I'm to the point now of more stitching, more decorating. So I've got space throughout for some additional panels to be created and added. But the one I want to work on today is actually for the spine. So I've actually pre-thought it, pre-cut it, pre-planned it. So I want to actually pull it apart and show you what I did, and then I'll stop the video. I'll then spend some time stitching and then come back to you with how it all sort of worked out. So the first thing I did was I measured my spine, and it's actually nearly 5.5 inches. So I'm going to go on the side of 5.5. I then want it to wrap around the cover just a little bit. And the other thing I really wanted was to have some lace down this edge as well as the other side. So I spent a bit of time looking for a doily or a placemat, that would do. So it needed to be a rectangle, and I found this placemat. Now I'm just going to deconstruct this a little bit so that I can show you all of the elements that came together for it. Now I took a photo of my piece so that we should be able to put this back together, and I'll sort of give you my logic for doing what I've done. So I'm getting rid of all of the pins, and okay, I think there's one more there. Now I might just zoom back a little bit so you've got a little bit of space to sort of see. Whoops, that's a little bit better. Okay. Now, the first thing I did was cut a panel that was going to be big enough to back everything, and that was my calico or muslin. And I measured my 5.5 and 12 inches. So that's what I need to do the job on the spine of the book. Then I decided that I would find a doily that had a lot of lace, which I did, and I came across this one. It's actually a placemat. So it worked out just perfectly. And I placed it on the muslin, centered it, and realized that the muslin was going to peek through this cream background versus the white. So I sort of hummed and hawed a little bit and decided that I didn't like it. So I went back to the scraps left from doing our pages, and I found these two pieces of fabric that would nearly do the job. They're not quite wide enough, so I just tore two, and that will sort of get me out of trouble. Let's put that there because it had that edge cut that wasn't straight, and that one there. Okay, so now I've got a white background peeking through my white placemat. Okay, by all means this is not an old placemat at all. It's definitely modern, but it is the perfect size, and I want to embellish it and use this tag as my inspiration. Now I worked out that the tag needs to sit about there. So this top bit was sort of off the top of the book, and that gave me all this space to sort of build up a design. Now before I started the video I took a photo of the layout, so we've got something to refer to as we reconstruct what I had planned to do. Now the first thing I did was went looking for some floral pieces that would match the colour scheme, and I have this quilt. It's not an old quilt, it's probably about 10 years old. It's certainly not a heritage quilt, and it's got even a shiny sort of background on this here. I often remove that because that's actually quite annoying to push your needle through. It feels nearly metally when you do it. It's just yucky. It's not a nice cotton. So I usually unpick that and take it away. Now, in amongst this, I found this floral here. So what I did was I cut a piece out. Now I've left the back on this time because it's only a little bit of stitching. So the small amount of annoyance that this will do, I'm gonna put up with it because I want the puffiness. Now, if I decide that I just don't want to tackle that back, I could probably take it off by snipping as much as I could of the excess out, which I think I might do actually, because from memory last time I did this, it is just annoying. So I plan to embellish the flower with additional stitching to really give it some texture, but I want the wadding. You'll see what I mean in a moment, because there's other portions of this panel that I plan to use as well, and I've removed everything, the stitching, the wadding, everything, and that's going to be leaves and another flower. And that's going to help me with a bit of dimension to my piece, height. So this one will be the highest piece, and then the other little bits and pieces will be lower. So I'm removing that backing because it is annoying, but I'm not losing the integrity of the quilted piece. Now there's quilt lines or stitch lines all over this that I plan on replacing with needle and thread. But for now I'm going to leave them in there because there's a lot and I sort of want to know where to stitch. Can you see the lines? That's a sewing machine has completed that stitching. Well, I'm going to replace that with my own stitches so that it's a little bit more rustic. Now that piece I was popping down the bottom here so that the tag would just sit on top of it once it was pinned into position. Then the second piece that was left, I think that was attached to the side here. I've actually removed all of the backing, but I can still see where the machine stitch lines are. So I will be able to still replace them, but they're going to sit further back on the panel. So that little one I was going to tuck in up there, like so. Okay, so it's peeking out behind the tag. It's all about merging the tag and the image into one. So I really had to focus on matching the colors the best I could, and then the style of work that I did on this piece here. So then I decided I needed a fence or a ground or a base here. So I've got this little blouse I picked up at an op shop. It's just like a little lacy top, which has gorgeous motifs built into it. It was quite reasonably priced. I think it was $4. And it's just giving me these gorgeous pieces of lace, these motifs. So I've cut two out, and they are going to be the center, the bottom of my panel, just to give this spray of flowers a baseline. Okay, so then the last little element is a table runner that I picked up also at an op shop, and I've packed it away. I might just grab it because I really want to show you this thing. Okay, this is it here. I was with some friends at the time and they were like, oh, that is just the ugliest thing we've ever seen. But I don't know, I just love it. And I've been chopping away at it. I use some of these little scrolly pieces. I use the flowers. My Journal of Stitchery has that big panel on the very back of it. It's just beautiful. It's about 1.5 meters long, so it's like the gift that keeps giving. So what I've done is I've removed some of those flowers just by fussy cutting them out, trying hard to stay away from the edge of the embroidery, because if I was to break that, I think it would just fall to pieces. And when I place them into position, I'm going to really have to make sure that they are stitched down well, if anything overcast quite a lot, so that yeah, the piece just doesn't fall to bits on me at a later date. Okay, so just checking my picture here to make sure we've got everything in the right spot. That one there. Okay, then I had some random green left of that quilt. They are not leaves from the actual print on the quilt, it's just green fabric, and it's been removed. I've removed the back, so it's now just a single piece, and I was just going to pop them around, tuck them in here and there, just to sort of tie it all together, and I'll embroider some additional stitches over them. So I think that's where I had everything. Where was this little guy? He's coming up this side. Okay, so that now matches my photo. So we've reconstructed the piece. Just going to add a few little pins here and there. My first step is to stitch all the backgrounds together with the table runner, attaching everything, and then these pieces will go on. So I'll actually have to pull this apart again, but the first step will be to get all of the white elements stitched together so that they are one. All right. So the only other thing I wanted to show you is I picked up this lace from Spotlight. It was it's technically a bridal lace. It was not cheap. It was probably about $12 for 2.5 meters. But what caught my eye is it is made up of a heap of leaves, which for slow stitch work and piecing together elements of recreating something from nothing, these little things are just fantastic. So what I plan to do is, once I've got everything secure, I'll go around with these little elements and just pop them in here and there to really give more detail to my piece. So they'll be stitched in as just more and more pretty bits and pieces. And then referring back to my tag, there's some pink beads I used, so I want to bring some of those into my piece. So I think I've pretty much got it covered. I've found a fabric that's got these little limey greens through to bright greens. I've found my pinks. So I'm pretty pleased with the way that this has come together. It matches the tag, it complements the tag, and it's the right size for my spine. So that's my plan for my book. I will now go away, do some stitching, and then I'll come back and show you the finished product, and then we can add it to the spine of my journal, and it should look just gorgeous. I'm really happy with it. I was just wondering how I was going to match everything to the tag, because I've got these 5 tags to create pieces around to add into the journal. So really happy with the spine. I think this is going to come together beautifully. Okay everyone, happy stitching, and I'll see you all soon. I'll stop the video now and then join in the next stage, the completion. Okay, talk to you soon. Bye. Okay, I'm back just with a bit of an update on my piece. First of all, I stitched down the doily to the backing pieces. So that's nice and secure, just with a little invisible stitch. And I just used the lines of the doily as my guidelines to stitch. So right through all of these little areas is where I've placed my little tiny stitches just to secure everything. I've then gone and unpicked the quilted stitching that the manufacturer put on that piece, because it was a real fine synthetic thread, and I've replaced it with my stitching, which is the number 8 crochet cotton, pearl cotton. So I've maintained then the quilted look of that piece, which I think is something a little bit different to what I've done in the past. I would normally unpick that and not bother with it. So I'm really liking the way that has come together. And then the little piece at the top, I've done the same. So I've left the wadding under the bigger piece, but not this one, because I'm trying to create some layers, some depth to the image. So then I went through and attached all of the pink flowers, and I also started attaching the little tufts of lace that are like little additional leaves, these little ones and these ones. The big motifs at the bottom, the two big white ones, they're also in position. Can't really see them too well, but they're sort of here and here. And then the green fabric that was left that I cut into the shape of a leaf, I've just gone around the outer edge of those just with a little overcast stitch, if you can just see it there, just to secure it into position. So that's everything down and attached. The next thing I'm working on is the flower. I want to embellish that flower. So I've started working out 2 petals at the base of the flower, like 2 semicircles. There's one there and one there. And just popping in some general long and short stitches. But I'm leaving some gaps in the middle of them all for some beads. Now I'll just bring that up to the camera and show you. So that's it there. So you can see my stitches coming in here. So I've just pretending that there's a petal here in that shape, and then there'll be another one over here. Now in the center here, I've left a little gap, a little bit of a gap there. And I'll do the same over here. I've actually drawn a line here just to indicate that that's potential pearls. Now I'm considering bringing in some of these pearls as the highlight, but I'm also having a think about these guys because it's the petal closest to you. It would be nice to have a little bit of the cream in here because that's going to give the reflection that this is in the sunlight. Now down into the center of the flower, I've just put in at the moment some just straight stab stitches. I'm going to come back with some beads, most probably beads that are on the tag, and attach a little bead at the end of them, and then maybe some French knots deep down in here in a really dark red. So the red that I'm using at the moment for that is that one, and that is the petal that's on the outside. So the challenge I've got with this tag is I've got hot pinks and I've also got what I call burnt pinks. So they're nearly completely different pinks. Well, they are, to be honest. So what I've got to do is merge it all together. And the best way to do that is sew hot over the warmer pinks and warm over the colder pinks. Does that make sense? No, the colder pinks over the warmer pinks and the warmer pinks over the cold. So when you have a look at my tag, I've used bright colours here and here, but then these are a darker tones of pinks. I've got bright greens and then olive greens. So, and it's similar on my piece here. I've got this bright piece of quilting, but these darker, dirtier pink flowers. So it's quite a challenge to merge it all together. I will be doing a bit of embroidery on this leaf. It's sort of quite predominant. How I do it yet, not sure. Am I 100% sure I'm going to do it? Not sure, because the thing that's worrying me is there's a lot of this quilted stitch over it. So the leaf will cover, if I embroider that, I will cover that, that quilted look. So that's sort of concerning me a little bit, that I'm going to lose that effect. So whether I just do this leaf here and all I would lose is this line, so then it looks like it's on the top side of, let's say that's fencing. It's on the top side of the fence or the trellis. I'm just not 100% sure. Maybe I just come through with some beads and highlight the green. Yeah, still thinking about that. got a lot of work to do on this flower, so I'm going to focus on that flower for now. Now I just wanted to show you the tag. I did slightly change the design because this piece was going to be at the back and this side. So I ended up changing it because at the end of the day, it's going on to the spine of the book. And I want to see as much of the work as possible when you pick up the book. So that meant this flower really needed to come to this side. Otherwise, it's on the back of the book. So I thought that was a bit of a waste. So in pinning it down again, that's when I realised I had a bit of a design flaw there. Now the tag, I've put a little line here to let me know where the base of the tag's going to go. And it's actually going to slip in under those flowers so that the flowers are sitting on top of the tag. I'll just pull this petal up so that you can see what I'm thinking. I want the tag to feel like it's nestled in the flowers. So that's going to go up a little bit like that. And then it is going to be actually, I'm going to stitch it down. When Anne did the project, she would put some stitches around the outside of her tag to attach what was underneath. Well, I'm going to do that this time, attaching it to the actual panel. So once that's into position, it's going to hold it down. It won't flip-flop around. And by nestling it in under these flowers here, it'll sort of make it look like it's part of the foliage. So it won't be as noticeable that it's even there, I don't think, yet it's there. So I'm just going to lift those up a little bit more. So I want the two flowers to come up onto the tag like so. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with the way it's coming together. Now it's just all about embellishing. It's adding these little decorative pieces to really make the piece look 3D and come alive. Okay, so I will turn the camera off now and go away and stitch some more. A day has passed since I filmed the first section, so it's been just so much fun to work on, so I just can't put it down. I should be looking at some other projects, but this one has just pulled me in, so any excuse to stitch some flowers, I say. All right, I will see you shortly with the finished product, and then we can add it to the spine of the journal. Okay, bye-bye. Hello everyone, I'm back. I've left the camera zoomed out for a moment and then I'll zoom in so that you can have a closer look at the piece. It's finished. It has taken ages. It's just been, I don't know, it's actually been a bit of a struggle, this one, but it has come together now and I'm really happy with it. But the technical side of it was quite a challenge, but I'll go through all that in a moment. So I'm going to zoom in now so that it's a little bit more defined for you. Okay, let's start at the top. Now I've last thing I did was the tag, so we'll come back to the actual tag itself. If you just cast your eyes to behind, I've stitched everything down that we spoke about in the videos just prior, but I did move this flower to this side where it was on that side. I just felt like this was the front of the book. When that was glued down, I wanted to see more pretty instead of that being on the back of the book. That'll make sense in a moment when I show you it attached to the actual journal. So I'll just bring it up to the camera and show you some of the embellishment. So the flowers on the quilt, and there's two, this one and that one, I stitched in the two flowers that are on this side of the flower. So how do I explain myself? So these are the top two petals, and then this is into the throat, and then this is the back. So what I did is I selected the top two and did some long and short stitches in the dusty pink, and then added the beads like a touch of light. I believe I mentioned that in the previous video. Then I put in some pistol stitches, added some beads and some French knots, and they're the stamens of the flower. Then in there is also some sequins with a little bead in the center and a little tuft of red sari silk and French knots. Now I'll bring that up to the camera so you can really see the detail there. Okay, see the little French knots and the 2 sequins and all the beads. That's how I treated the 2 flowers that are on the quilted section. Now I also mentioned that I wanted to leave the quilt lines in play. So I unpicked what the manufacturer put in place and then put my stitches over it so that they were more pronounced and in a cream that I was using elsewhere as seed stitch. You can even see green seed stitch in there as well. So the background was all filled in with lots of seed stitch at the very end of the project. But those lines there have given a fantastic grid effect to the piece. They're subtle through the whole piece, but you can make them out as they crisscross through it. So it looks like there's actually a bigger piece of quilt there than what there actually is. So I'm really happy with that effect. I then went to the big flowers and added seed beads to the centers of them, all of them, and a random sequin in dusty pink with a little pearl on top. And then there's another one there. So that got rid of the very dull and flat center that was in the flowers. It was like a dirty green and it just didn't look right. It needed something to be done. Now what did I do next? I also added throughout the whole piece little motifs of the leaves of lace that was on a roll of lace that I showed you as well. That's this lace here. So I cut out heaps of those and just poked them in around to give more detail on top of what is already white, but it's like a shiny white. So I think it came up really well. I then in places what I call a cluster. So it's a combination of little rosettes, a linen button, and then some sequins and some beads, and it's literally just a cluster of goodies. Wherever I felt like my design was a little bit flat, like this edge here, that's where I did a cluster. I did another cluster here. There's a rosette, one of the bigger motif flowers that matched. That's sari silk once again, some beads. So just a cluster, and then I tucked in a little button there as well. I did a large cluster down the bottom here, at the bottom of this piece. There's sari silk, rosettes, beads, some lace motif leaves, and then it continued sort of down at an angle down the front here. Which brings me to this section. Now, this tag that I'm using as my inspiration, that particular week, week 20, was all about Pekingese Stitch, which I thought I might repeat down here so that it ties it back to the tag that is the feature for this actual piece. And then I thought that's a perfect spot to put in a little laundry tag that are my initials. So I tend to add these now to all of my work. It's just a really cute way to initial or sign your work, sometimes on the front, sometimes just at the back or a bottom corner, wherever you think it's suitable for the design. And then I just added some beads and another linen covered button. And then these two daisy stitches also match the tag up the top. Before we go to the tag, I then went through and added some additional leaves and used 7mm silk ribbon and just did some big stab stitches so that just one stitch came up, went straight back down, but left it really loose and bulbous looking. So it wasn't pulled tight, so that makes it look quite 3D. Then I popped in the center of all of those leaves some little seed beads just to give it a bit of a sparkle. Now those locations were where I had some green fabric left and I just cut out a rough shape of a leaf and stitched it down with invisible stitches, and then I did the ribbon over the top of it and then the seed beads. And then to sort of finish it off, I went back and did seed stitch on the green fabric underneath. So that sort of created like a layered effect of the green seed stitch, the ribbon, and then the bead. So there's one there, there was one here, one to the side of the panel and one up the top here. I did then add some additional little tufts of these potential leaves made out of the ribbon. It just needed that little bit extra to balance it. Now on the tag, I used a little floral fabric here. I went and found that because I had a few blank spots that just needed something extra. So I found this fabric and I cut out some little pieces of it. And there's a little piece in here. I'll bring it up close in a minute so you can see. And then a second piece was worked in down here in this cluster. So I'll go back to this one and bring it up to the camera. So that's the fabric. And then that is a little piece that's tucked in here that I've then embellished with some straight stitches and some French knots in the center of the rosettes. I then went through with the wool, which is Gumnut Yarn, and did some additional little leaves. So there's like layers upon layers upon layers, and you can see why this took so long. It just never ended. And every time I thought, I'll just do this and I should be done, I'd look back at it and go, no, I've got a gap. So it was away we went again. So there is a little flower that I've added, put in some stitches on top with some French knots in the center of the dark red, and then went around and highlighted the little leaves in the yarn, the wool. And then in around it all came that cluster that we just spoke about, which was a combination of lots of bits and pieces. So it became quite intricate. Now, what else did I do? On this side here, there was doily showing through here. It was only a little bit, but just enough to look odd. So then, of course, I had to seed stitch it. See what I mean by it just never ended. Now, the only regret I have is I really love the look of the seed stitch. And the only spots that it really was, I'll just zoom out a little bit, is on the side that is technically the back of the big journal. I wished I had had a bit of air up here, as in blank space that could have been seed stitched. So upon reflection, I probably would have lifted this flower up, forgotten about that one, and then did a heap of seed stitch in there. But either way, I do love it, and I probably created more work than I needed for myself, but it just, yeah. I'd have to say I did not like it at first, but the more I added, then the more details like these clusters and then the ribbons and then lace motifs, it just came alive and started to look 3D. Which brings me to the tag, the whole reason we're here. That's the, what they call Pekingese Stitch up the top there, where the stitches are, well, I'll go through what you actually do. You do a circle first with a pen or a pencil, and then do a running stitch around. Okay, the stitches have to be all similar in size. Then you go through with your needle and thread, and you come up and then slip underneath your running stitch, then go forward 2 stitches and come back underneath, and then the next stitch along, back underneath, looping as you go. It's hard to explain, but if you type into YouTube Pekingese Stitch, there are some great tutorials out there, and they're really simple. They're like 3-minute little videos. So I decided that I better do it again down here, hence how that came to be. And I used a soft pink with the red, and then the 2 little daisy stitches, and up here I used the 3 daisy stitches. So that sort of tied it all together. What else did I have to do? Oh, the attaching of the tag. Now, if you've done the Anne project, Anne stitched the back of the tag with a note to say what had happened in her week, like a little diarised, and she used a stitch that went through the cardboard tag to attach the back instead of glue. So, and I didn't do that because my back was covered in paper, pretty paper, and then I did some additional little stitcheries to stick on the back. So I didn't really need to do this big stitch around the perimeter, but I thought I'd do it here to attach it to my piece. So you've got to be a little careful that you get your lines fairly straight, because once you've punctured the paper and you've come through, it's a bit hard to hide your design. But it was just a case of coming up, going back down, scooting over to here from behind, coming up and then back down, and I just worked my way around the tag and that attached it. I still left the Velcro dot underneath because it helped provide a bit of support to the center of my tag, because it's sitting above a few things. So I sort of felt that the Velcro dot sort of just stabilized the tag. So that's in behind. I left the pin there. It is pinned through as well, so just another way of stabilizing it. Plus I like the look of it, so it does look like it's pinned. I then, as I was doing my embroidery, I left this all flapping in the wind, so to speak, because I wanted to tuck my tag under these petals, which did end up being another problem because the petal covered the two little beads that are here from the tag. So I had to snip them off, re-stitch them, and then get it into position, stitch it all down, bring the petals back over the tag, and then reattach the seed stitch. Another thing that just took forever. So you can see how this just went on and on and on. There was like a lot of engineering that needed to happen to make this work. Now I used a really fine needle, the one I normally would use for beading, to do this step. And then using the thread that was left from those beads, I just kept piercing through the cardboard and stitched all the way along this edge, and then a few little random invisible stitches up through there. So it's like really secure along this edge and the flower as well. So there's a lot of stitching in here just to help with, once again, the engineering of this. At the end of the day, it's on a spine, and I'm going to have my hands on it, pulling the book around and lifting the book. So I wanted to make sure that everything was like really, really secure. Okay, so that's pretty much the summary. I just wanted to show you a couple extra things that I used in case you were wondering, in case I missed it, and this will sort of help prompt me. Eyelash yarn, once again, was wrapped around the buttons when I stitched them down. So that's pretty common stuff around. I've already shown you the lace that I use, that I got all of those little leaves from. It's a birch lace. I'll put a few extra details in the descriptions for you. I use the red I think it's 608, which is a pearl cotton, and then my favorite, which is 712 DMC products. These two here are vintage, so I just don't have, I know it's a number 8, it's a pearl cotton, it's made by Anchor, but there's no color on that, and this probably is about 30 years old. This is another vintage one. It's a variegated green. That's what I use to seed stitch everywhere, through there and around there, and it was really fun because it changed colors. So whenever the thread was dark, I made sure I started deep into the work, working my way out so the thread got lighter, just like light does when it bounces off leaves and causes shadows and things. Now, what else did I want to show you? The Gumnut Yarn. This is an Australian company, but it's you could use all sorts of yarns out there if you wanted a wool effect to your piece. So that's what I used there. This is the satin ribbon I used, and it's 7mm. This is a different size ribbon, which I sometimes use as well, and I meant to measure it and I didn't, and that is 5mm. So 5mm or 4mm it could have even been, and I used 7mm on this piece. So if you did want to do some leaves, 7mm is going to give you a nice chunky leaf like these. Now what else have I got here? Some seed beads. I used those 3 colors. These two are the same size, but these ones are slightly smaller. So they were the colors I used. And last of all, if you're wondering what these laundry tags are about, this is what they're about. Many, many years ago, it was a big tradition to put names of people on clothing, and they created this laundry tag. So what I've found is a lady in France that sells these. They're vintage, so you get this really cute old box with your tags if you buy some that are your initials, and she has plenty of initial combinations. So I'll put her Etsy store in the description. So if you did want to invest in some that are specifically your letters, it's great, especially if you're going to do a lot of needlework. It's a lovely way to sign your work with a vintage piece like that. Now she also sells from time to time mixed pieces. So in here are some numbers and some random initials. They're a lot of fun too, that if you just want something a bit odd as part of your design and it really means nothing but, you know, just a number or a letter, like here's a 50. You could work that into your design as just a little element. So if you can't find your actual initials, maybe get yourself some just general little laundry tags until you come across a listing with your initials. So that's the laundry tags, and I've popped them in a little box so I know where they are. So if you're wondering what that's all about, the linen buttons, linen covered buttons, old antique buttons, but if you type into Etsy or even eBay linen covered buttons, you will see them pop up everywhere for sale. So you should be able to get yourself some of those as well. Okay everyone, I'm going to leave it at that. This piece I'm going to call finished. It's now going to be stitched onto the spine of my book, which I'll just bring over like so, and it will go into position like that. I'll put some invisible stitches around the top and around the bottom to secure it, and then some PVA glue to glue it down at the back and the front, and it will become part of my book. Okay, it's a bit hard to show you because of the size of my camera space, but I'll just zoom out a little bit more so you can see. So a bit of glue there, I'll attach that down, and then the same on the other side, and that'll be attached, and that is the spine for my journal. Okay everyone, we're moving along with our project. So the next video will be some pages from inside the journal. I've got to do the front and back cover, if you recall, and I've got space in the center signature for 2 stitcheries as well. And these are the 4 tags that I have kept aside for my inspiration. So I will stop the video here now, and I will see you in a few weeks when I pick this project back up. This one will take a little while because these stitcheries are so big that literally I've spent 4 days just on this spine piece. So we'll grab it when I can and tune back in when I've done another piece. Okay everyone, I'll see you all soon. Happy stitching, stay safe, bye.